and this is The Breakfast Show with Scaffy and Lindsay.
That's very good. And we are going to be having a conversation today with Micheal Thompson. He's the newest scientist that is part of the Creations Ministries international team. So welcome, Micheal. Welcome to The Breakfast Show. It's great to have you here. And since you're new around Creation Ministries International, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi there. It's great to be on. So I actually I did a Bachelor's of Electrical Engineering and then a PhD in Coastal Engineering. So all of the studying waves, water, the ocean, how sediment moves in the water, and that sort of area. And then after finishing that, after a little bit of work, I then joined CMI. I thought, I've always loved doing apologetics and helping people see that they can trust the Bible and can, that there isn't a barrier of science in between them starting a relationship with God. And so, that's sort of, I thought, I can use this science knowledge I've got to help people with that too now.
Absolutely. Well,
through my work.
That is great. And tell us this thing, Micheal. So how did you end up becoming interested in that particular field of apologetics and the interaction between science and faith? Was that something that you grew up with that interest, or something that came in later in life?
Yeah, so I, especially the last few years of high school, that's when because I was at it was a Christian school, but it was a very academic sort of school, and I loved doing science and maths. And I remember I had friends who, we'd have, you'd hear in classes about evolution, or you get taught about Galileo and the story, which is, it's important history, but often it's framed in a way where it's teaching that church is bad for society and it's, anti-science. And so I'd have these friends saying that, we need to stop, going after Christianity and we need to be secular. And so those challenges came towards me, and that's when I started to really dig into apologetics, because I realized I need, I do love God and I love science too, but I need to have the answers to these questions. And that's where the apologetics just, is so important, I think, to have the answers to these sorts of questions, not just so we can answer other people, but actually be confident in our own faith.
Wow, that's amazing. Do you remember, was there any particular book or article or movie or someone that really kick-started you in that journey? Perhaps a book that you read and said, oh, wow, this is amazing, this is fascinating, this is exactly what I'm looking after. Because as you mentioned, you were surrounded by friends that were saying, hey, you know what, they were trying to influence you towards going away from a biblical view of the world. That's what turned you to apologetics. Was there perhaps an author or someone that influenced you a lot in that early part of your discovery journey?
Yeah, so I think I do remember when at my old church that I went to at the time when I was in high school, we actually had Creation Ministries, the organisation I work for now. This was like 15, 16 years ago. They came to our church and spoke, and I think it was Jonathan Sarfati who spoke at our church, and I was very encouraged. But I think even more so, my parents were very encouraged. And they got the Creation Answers book, which is just a little red book with all the common questions you get about science and the Bible.
Nice.
And so I wasn't actually a very good reader. I was a bit lazy, so I didn't read much myself. But my parents got the books and resources, and they read through it. And whenever I had questions, I'd ask them, and they really helped me a lot through that. And
wow.
I think another thing I got too, there was some DVD series on some debates that John Lennox had with Richard Dawkins, and I used to watch them a lot, and I just found that and I wouldn't say, I wouldn't agree with everything that Lennox says about creation today, but certainly his dialogue with Dawkins on a lot of the philosophy point of view things were very helpful to me.
Absolutely. I love John Lennox as well. think I have seen some of these DVDs you're talking about. But I actually wanted to talk to you because this is one thing that happens a lot. I've seen a lot of Christian parents that get worried with their children, particularly when they are in these teenage years, high school years, or even getting early university years. And this is a time where a lot of people report that they lose their faith, that they stop really believing in the Bible, particularly because of now they are being exposed to evolutionary theory, and it starts to look that it makes more sense to them. But you kind of went the other direction. It looks like during that time of your life, you ended up really solidifying your belief in God and your belief in the Bible. So what do you think? How do you think? What was in your experience? What led you to strengthen your belief in God and in the Bible, as opposed to what happens to so many other, young boys and girls, or men and women that start being almost like indoctrinated into evolution at that part of their lives?
Yeah, good question. I'd say, I think first you have to, I really do think especially near about grade 12, that area, that's when I really started to own my faith and essentially not so much, growing up in a Christian household, it's easy to just sort of go along to church because that's what your whole family does. And, but that I really, for me, that's, I guess by God's grace, we realized that, I really am a sinner. I really do need salvation and I need forgiveness. And so really, I guess out of a love for what God has done for me. And I think that's because of that, then when these questions come along, it's like, I know God's true. I love God. I need to know the answers. There must be answers to these things because I know God is true and I know the Bible's true. So I think it comes from, for different people, so I've heard of other people in CMI, other speakers who actually saw the science first and then they became a creationist scientifically before they became a Christian, which I find is just fascinating. But for me, it was, I guess, the other way around, but I already really did like science too. But I think actually really loving God and understanding, the power of his salvation for me, it gives me the motivation to really want to, otherwise I wouldn't want to study all this stuff. I used to, I wouldn't do things if I didn't have to. but when it really mattered to me, I was like, yes, I'm going to study everything I can because this is important and I want other people to know about Jesus, and this is a way I can get them to understand that too.
And I really like about your testimony, the part that you mentioned that your parents were actually on top of it. So when you were asking them questions, because I find sometimes that some parents, they kind of shut the questions down. And when the kids go back home and they're starting to ask difficult questions, the parents say, look, I don't know, this is not important. Just believe, stop asking these questions. And I think that this also creates a lot of damage to young minds when they say, hey, maybe there are no questions or there are no good answers to these questions. But I love how your parents said, no, we're going to study. And when you come to them, that they were able to either point you to an answer or at least point you to the right direction. Micheal, I actually wanted to ask you this question here. You mentioned that you actually started a faith and science event at your high school. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what impact did that have in your journey?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so I in my final year of high school, grade 12, I was actually they have different prefect positions, small positions of leadership in the school, like, you have your school captains. Because we were a Christian school, we had what are called faith prefects. So I was one of them. They get to organise things like chapel services but yeah, I remember one of the courses I was doing, which everyone had to do, it was actually called Christian Studies as a class. But even though it was called Christian Studies, we learnt about the evolutionary worldview, probably more than the Christian worldview.
Oh, wow.
So there was one class, this is at a Christian school as well. Again, it's a Christian school from the outside, and it was a wonderful school. I absolutely loved it. But they have to stick to curriculum, and the curriculum says they have to do, so every school has to follow the curriculum. And when you look at the curriculum, it's not very Christian at all in some subjects. So we sat down and watched it was a 2-hour-long documentary about Richard Dawkins' book, The God Delusion. And I thought, oh, okay, fair enough, but surely they'll have a lesson afterwards to say why it's wrong. And they didn't. And so everyone walked out thinking,
wow.
Yeah,
I totally expected it to be like, yep, and we don't believe that.
That's what, yeah. And so I was thinking, what's going on? I was really worried about all these friends that I had and people. So I actually contacted the head of the Christian Studies department, and I was like, oh, I don't know if you realise, but people are walking away questioning their faith and not really wanting to believe in God. And she was kind of worried too. And she said, oh, I didn't realise this. And so I said, okay, that's when I had the idea, let's get a science and faith panel. And so I went around and I found, I think it was 5 teachers in the school to be on the panel. And we actually got, some of the teachers were atheists, and I purposely picked some atheists because I wanted it to be, kind of even in a way.
Yeah.
A good dialogue. But I was thinking, who am I going to find? Because I knew some good atheists, but I didn't know any really strong Christians at the time. And of course, I think this is the important thing, is I had my church praying for it. We had some wonderful people at my church who were very much involved in apologetics that my parents knew, and they got me in contact with, and they equipped me with resources as well. And they just had a lot of people praying for me and for the event. And I think that was one of the big things that was important.
Yeah, so good.
But yeah, eventually, I don't know how, but it turns out the head of physics, I'm still in contact with him today, my physics teacher. He's a strong Christian, and he was an absolutely brilliant guy, really intelligent, the head of physics. And he was retiring the year after. And so the advantage of that is that as a teacher, they're restricted in how much they share their faith. It's just a school-wide thing. Even at Christian schools, there's limits to how much you can actually share, whereas the students they got more freedom to say what they believe. But because he was retiring the next year, he was like, well, you know
just
what?
Go hard.
That's right. And he did. And he was gentle and respectful, but he was, we had 70 or 80 people come along to the lunchtime session, and he was brilliant. He just, he answered a lot of, students were, saying clever, trying to trap the Christian with questions, and he just took it apart and went, no, well, this is why. And they went, oh yeah, you know what, that makes sense. And
so good.
it just ended up
really cool.
Yeah, it went really well.
So we only have about a minute left here in our time today, Michael, and I'm sure that we are going to have other opportunities to talk. But just to finalize, how would you like to encourage any of our young listeners who want to make an impact for God in their schools? What can you say to them?
Yeah, so I'd say again, first thing, start praying about opportunities and ask other people around you to pray about opportunities and your school. I think that's a huge thing, having a lot of people praying for you. And just ask, I guess, other people, have some ideas. And I think once you start praying about these things, God will start filling your mind with ideas of how to evangelize and outreach in your school. And that you can do it through lunchtime activities or Bible study groups at lunchtime. You could meet up with your school chaplain if you've got one, or even your school assignment projects. You could shape them in a way so that you're actually evangelizing through your assignment work to the teacher. Even.
Yeah,
that's pretty awesome.
So good.
So lots of ways. Yeah,
there's some really, really great ideas. Michael, thank you so much for joining us today. And do you have any article or any resource that you would like to recommend to our listeners so that they can learn more. So you mentioned about the CMI, the Christian Ministries International Resources. Is there any article that you have wrote, or have you wrote anything to them already, something that we can share?
I haven't actually written about this experience that I've shared, but I do have other articles on creation.com. So you can just, type up in creation.com Micheal Thompson, and there'll be a few articles, but there's a lot more articles of super high quality that plenty of other authors have written too, which are great to read as well. So just creation.com, type in your questions, and there's answers to these questions at the high school level, the university level, the scholarly level. It's a fantastic resource.
Very good. Well, Micheal, thank you so much. It's great to have you here with us this morning. I cannot wait to listen more from you in the interviews to come.